Two humorous nurses would like to acknowledge the true custodians of the land in which we record our podcast, the Yorta Yorta people.
We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders listening today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
We're so excited for this episode to be sponsored by eNurse. eNurse is Australia's leading one-stop nurse shop. eNurse specialises in everything a nurse or nursing student would need to survive.
From comfortable, stylish and keep you cool under pressure elite hair scrubs to handheld study guides, nursing equipment and even a travel coffee mug for those long commutes.
eNurse will be your new favourite online shop for all things nursing.
Head to www.enurse.com.au and use our code HumorousNurses for a cheeky discount.
Two Humorous Nurses with Kelly and Jess.
The podcast that thanks God for Panadol.
Welcome to Two Humorous Nurses, where we plan to bring you funny, informal, conversational chat about all things nursing.
Having a child is supposed to be the best time of your life, but what if your child or children are sick? How does life change if it's full of hospital visits, tests, medications, and worry?
To discuss this very concept, we have Emily. I met Emily over 10 years ago when our biggest worry in our lives was dating and cleaning our utes. But as it happens, we grew up, married a couple of cool dudes and had some kids. Emily has two gorgeous boys, Ryan, who's 5, and Owen, who's almost 1. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, Emily. Emily,
Hello.
can you tell us a little bit
Oh,
about who you are? Sorry. Hi, Emily.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, Emily?
I am Emily, obviously. I'm a registered nurse, well, clinical nurse now. I forgot I got a new job.
Ooh.
And I, like Kelly said, have two little dudes who have given me lots of mischief.
And the irony about doing this episode about parenting sick kids is you're currently parenting a sick kid.
Yeah, and I think we had to cancel it last time because we were sick again.
Yeah. And this time we were like, not letting any norovirus bring us down. He can just shit next to me. With your pregnancies, we'll start there because obviously that's where you start when you have kids. Were they pretty straightforward? Were there any concerns raised with your boys, like during the pregnancies or anything like that, or were they just normal?
Ryan's pregnancy was cruisy as, super straightforward, no issues like the whole way through. Birth was like 3 hours, everything was wonderful. Then along came Owen and everything went to shit. His pregnancy was horrible. I ended up having SVT and they're thinking maybe POTS as well after Ryan's pregnancy. So his pregnancy was full of me going into hospital because I kept going in and out of SVT. So there was all extra monitoring and issues with that. Then we got COVID at, I think, 24 weeks because my husband decided to go watch the football in Melbourne with his friends and brought me home a present for my birthday, which was nice. And then after COVID, he ended up growing very, very fast. Then all the concerns went to being such a huge baby, worrying about monitoring me and if I had problems with my heart during delivery and stuff like that. And then he ended up being a Met call for me, a Met call for him, and came out almost 5 kilos.
Whoa. Holy heck.
That's
a big baby.
So
He
when you
was-
were pregnant with Owen,
Yeah.
as this was going on, was Ryan unwell at that time as well?
No, all his allergy stuff had resolved. I think he grew out of all of his things when he was about 3. So his was just the normal, kindy kids licking and touching everything. So all the grossness that comes with that.
Well, that's good. For a minute there, I was thinking you were dealing with all of it all at once.
Oh, I would have probably had a mental breakdown by that point.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot. When did you realise something wasn't quite right with Ryan?
With both boys at the hospital, we signed up to do telephone research trials through pregnancy and with the boys both up until they're 5. So we were at a cashew study. So they did a cashew study, give them X amount of cashew paste in food and just see how they react. But we had to sit there, wait for 2 hours and go, okay, not allergic to cashews, you can go home. Well, I made it down to the car park, paid for my parking ticket, turned back to look at him, and he was pale, limp, and covered head to toe in vomit.
Oh, wow.
And he'd gone into hypovolemic shock because he spewed so much.
How old
So
was he?
6 months.
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
So raced back upstairs. He didn't even flinch when they were cannulating him, had to have a fluid resus and spent a couple of days in hospital with that. But yeah, not a fun time.
Yeah, that's so that was just the start, really.
That was just the start.
Yeah. Well, tell us, so your boys both have quite a long history of illness and issues. To start with Ryan and give us a quick rundown of Ryan's early childhood.
So he was born like average size with no issues, but from about 6 months, he pretty much stopped growing, dropped down to like the second, third percentile. And so there was all the allergy stuff happening, and you can't eat this, you can eat this, but you need to put on weight, but why are you not putting on weight? And the cycle that kind of grew with everyone being concerned about how small he was. And then as he got older, it was, cold after cold after cold. Then he had blocked tear ducts. So he had to have surgery for that when he was 1 to get them unblocked. He had his adenoids done when he was 2, I think, because he was snoring and horrible breathing and sick all the time. And then at 3, they did his adenoids again and his tonsils. And tonsils suck in small kids.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Yeah, so then he just kept, after that, his sleeping was better and his breathing and things were a bit better, but then it was just the, school germs.
Did he have a diagnosis with the allergies? Is there a reason?
Yeah, they put it down to FPIES, so food protein induced enterocolitis syndrome, which is effectively his body couldn't digest the protein, and when the protein of certain foods hit the gastrointestinal tract, it pretty much vacates the quickest way it can possible, whether they vomit profusely till they get everything out or they have diarrhea until it comes out the other end. Some kids, it is mild. Some kids, like Ryan, they go into full-blown hypovolemic shock. But it's a quantity-based allergy. So if you only have, like his was oats, he'd had a couple of teaspoons of oats at home and been fine. A week before, he had maybe like half a bowl, and he woke up from his sleep and was vomiting everywhere. And I just thought, this is a bit weird. But ED said it was his reflux, and we'd stopped his reflux meds, so that would have been what it was, and kind of sent us on our way. But then he had even more oats the next time, so the more quantity you eat, the worse the reaction becomes. But it's a really shitty, pun intended, allergy, because most doctors don't know about it. So most ED departments, you go to it and they have absolutely no idea. Because I remember the pediatrician saying it presents, when they're really, really unwell, it presents the same as sepsis.
Oh.
And they automatically go to thinking like they've got this massive, bacterial infection and they're going septic, and they rush, fluids and antibiotics and do all these things. And they're like, no, they really just need to be hydrated and stop eating, and you'll be right.
That's crazy.
Can you tell us about Owen and his medical journey?
His medical journey is a heart attack and a half. When he was born, he had low blood sugars, which they kind of just put down to being a unit when he was born. They said, big babies usually have sugar issues. So he bounced in and out of the NICU for a while, kind of balancing himself out. And then at home, he had reflux, same as Ryan, all the same refluxy, colicky symptoms. And he was probably, I think, 3 weeks old. My husband and Ryan had gone out somewhere, taken my car with the car seat, which would never be a mistake to do again. And I'd gotten him to sleep on me, and I was like, oh, I think you're asleep, but I don't want to move you in case you wake up. So, the old put the phone in front of them trick to try and take a photo to see if they're asleep. And I looked back and he was blue. And my heart sunk. I froze, and I was like, well, I just froze. So I was like, I'll put you flat, see what happens. His color kind of came back to him, stayed asleep the whole time, but his color came back. He then went super, super pale, and I was like, do I take you to the hospital? You're not blue anymore. You're fine, but are you fine? And that kind of, I fixed the immediate problem. Am I overthinking if it's actually a thing? Like, what do I do in this situation? I just kind of froze. So we took him to the hospital. We ended up getting admitted for a couple of days for testing and things. Had all the tests. He had an echo, and they said he had a little bit of a heart murmur, which resolved itself. But then they found that he was also really tacky for no reason. So he would just be lying there asleep in the bed, and his heart rate would be like 250. And they're kind of like, well, if you had SVT, is it him? Is it not? So more workups. And then they just said, they put it down to a BRUI, so a brief resolved unexplained event, which they say happens all the time in small babies. Something really horrible happens. It looks really strange, but no one can kind of give a reason why. They stop, they resolve back to normal, and it never usually happens again. So they said, if it happens again, go back in. Sure enough, a week later, same thing happened again, and back to hospital we went. The next doctor wasn't as kind as the previous team and just said, it's reflux, it's no issue, go home, you'll be fine. Thankfully, my GP had put in a referral to ENT at the Perth Children's Hospital because she thought it might be an airway issue. So we were trying to get in to get assessed for that, but he was unrelentlessly sick for, I think, probably about 10 months straight. So every time we kept trying to book an appointment with ENT, we'd get an appointment, we'd get sick. We'd get an appointment, we'd get sick. And it was just, we couldn't get anywhere. But he ended up being diagnosed with protracted bacterial bronchitis at, I think, 4 months old, because he had a wet chesty cough for about 6 or 7 weeks. And I remember taking him back to the GP every week going, like, he's still not getting better. He's still not getting better. Every time you put him flat, you can hear. And every night we'd put him lying in the bassinet, and we could hear the exact moment his airway would close. And you'd have to rip him back up and try and, give him a bit of a jostle so he'd start breathing again. Or you'd hear he'd just choke and splutter and wake himself up. So you couldn't put this kid down for months because he just couldn't breathe.
That's so scary.
It was horrible. We ended up getting him into the ENT clinic finally, and he had laryngomalacia, so we had to have the surgery to open up his airways. And they took out his adenoids and things at the same time, which helped his breathing quite a lot. But in that time, I think we worked out from when he was born to about 7 months old, he had been into hospital at least once a month.
Oh, gosh.
He really struggled with airways, and I'll never forget, we had one time that the pediatrician had said to us, it's not safe for him to be at home.
Wow.
And that just, when you hear someone say that, you're like, holy shit, have I been doing this wrong the whole time? Have I missed things? Have I not missed things? But every time you escalate, it's fine. You're like, he looks fine now, but you're not here in the middle of the night. I can't bring him to you in the middle of the night. So then as time got on, he's had para-influenza twice. He's had COVID. He's had rhino. I've lost track of the amount of times he's had rhinovirus. He's had gastro. He's had norovirus. He's had hand, foot, and mouth. And he only started daycare like 3 weeks ago, so it's not fair.
Do you think he's more susceptible to respiratory illness because of his breathing, or is it just he's just an unlucky kid?
When he was little, before he had the repair for the surgery, they did say he would be more susceptible because his airway was so weak and floppy that he couldn't like contract to kind of force everything out like you would normally to cough and clear your chest.
Yeah.
So everything would just sit there longer and then get infected. But we've tested his immune levels a few times, which have been a bit low, and they're actually thinking he does have some kind of immunocompromised. So again, waiting for another clinic with the immunotherapy clinic at the hospital to see and do some further testing as to what's going on with that.
He knows we're talking about him.
Yeah, he's like, excuse me, woman, keep feeding me.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way to enurse.com.au, because every nurse needs e-nurse. We need accessories, we need scrubs, we need footwear, we need equipment. So if you have a nurse in your life, why don't you head to enurse.com.au and have a look at their range of accessories with fob watches, coffee mugs, because we all need a travel coffee mug, utility pouches to keep those scissors, pens and educational cards in, and of course Christmas scrubs. Fun Scrub Fridays aren't fun scrubs unless you've got your Christmas scrubs. So head to enurse.com.au and check them out. Don't forget our code HumorousNurses for 10% off.
Oh, goodness. How old was he when he had surgery?
He was, how old were you? I think he was about 6 months old. It was meant to be when he was about 3 months old, which would have been absolutely horrific. But I managed to get a few more months, which was about 6 months, which wasn't much better.
Still terrifying,
to be honest. But he was just that bit bigger, which was good.
Goodness.
What's it like being the parent of a child having surgery? Not just like routine, tonsils or anything like that, but, like surgery on his airway.
I always found the anesthetic is the worst for me. I remember Ryan's first surgery, I was like, it's a quick 15-minute surgery. It's nothing, like he'll be here before I know it. It was at work. I knew the anaesthetist. Everything was fine. But that you hold them and you put the mask and you have to hold them tight so they stop trying to fight the mask. And then their eyes roll back and they just turn into this limp, dead weight. And they're like, cool, put your baby on the table and walk away. See ya.
Yeah.
And you're like, how have yes, this is normal for you. But
yeah,
I've just left you my unconscious baby with no idea what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
But yeah, the airway surgery wasn't terribly good, especially when I went to pick him up. And because we'd been to surgery a few times, I know the routine, they send you out the way, they get mum and dad to come back, they call you once the surgery's finished, and usually they bring you into recovery about 10, 15 minutes later when they start to wake up. But I remember we got the call to come back with Owen, and then it was 20 minutes went past, half an hour went past, 45 minutes, an hour. I was like, it's been an hour and a half since you called me and I've still not got back to recovery. Something's gone wrong. And sure enough, it had. He was completely in a state. They had almost murdered him because he was in severe respiratory distress when they had woken him up. His saturations were down to I think 81%. His rests were through the roof and he had huge work of breathing, and you could just hear him rattling and trying to suck the air in, but because of his big fat head, he was just thrashing around, and a dead weight with a giant big head is very hard to control. But he'd just wake up, scream, try and suck some air in, and then pass out again and throw himself around. So I think when they eventually got me down, he was still, I think, there for probably about another hour or 2 hours before they actually let us go and go back to the ward. But knowing, I found for me anyway, knowing what the monitors do and knowing what the observations are and knowing what the parameters are. You know, parents who aren't nurses can go to surgery and they see it like, oh, it's beeping. It's beeping, there's an alert. That's about it. Whereas I could be like, well, it's beeping. This is what happens. Why is this happening? And you kind of put pieces together and overthink and dramatize it a bit. But you know, it's what you do. You're trained to think and prepare for worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And then anything better than that is a win.
I guess that leads us into the next question we were going to ask about. You're a nurse.
Stepping ahead.
Help or hinder, you know, in any of these processes across any of the conditions that your bubs have had. Like, you know, it's sometimes nurse brain goes out the window because you click into mum mode, but sometimes nurse brain takes over. And
yeah, I've found that as well. It's very hard to have mum brain and nurse brain coexist at the same time.
They don't.
They don't.
They never do. You're either super clinical and like medical about it, or you're a complete emotional mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ian always has to be like, he's just fine. You're overthinking it. You always go the worst case scenario.
Yeah. And you don't want to
But
be a
then
bother. You don't want to turn up with your sick baby and be like, oh, my kid's sick, but, you know, I know
I don't want to waste your time. I'm really sorry.
Don't
But
go
then you go home and you're like, they're going to die. But yeah, it is hard to know. And I have found even like when I was reading your little question sheet going back, I've in the situations where I should go, yeah, this is really bad, I need to do something about it, I almost kind of go, I know it's bad, but maybe it's not as bad as I think it was. So maybe I'll just hold out just a little bit longer.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, which diagnosis do you think was the hardest between you and your husband, or hardest for you and hardest for him, if it's different?
It's a tricky one. I think with Ryan, the FPIs was hard because you really need to keep chiming in here.
That's a lot to say.
I know. I was like, I'll put him out in the swing and hopefully he'll be quiet. Apparently not. The FPIs was quite hard because, I mean, we were first-time parents with an allergy no one knew about. And every time you go somewhere, it had to be, no, you can't feed him something. Yes, no, you haven't heard of the allergy, but you can't just feed him what you want. And being on top of checking allergy lists of things, making sure random people don't feed him things, making sure people actually believe you're not lying about it. But then when Owen came around and his allergies and, you know, we a bit more knew what to do with that, but his airway was just, I don't think we slept for months.
No, you wouldn't. Because
you can hear it happen, or what happens if something goes when you are asleep or he's sick. So every time he gets sick, Ian kind of plays it off a little bit of, yeah, he's fine, he's just, you know, another sick. But I'm thinking, well, he's already had 3 chest infections. What if he gets another chest infection? Do I have to take him back to start antibiotics really quickly? What if it turns into this or this? And you've had so many bad things happen that you're just waiting for the next, you know, the next shoe to drop and the next bad thing to happen.
It's the mum mental load versus dad mental load too.
How nice would life be to be a dad?
Oh, God.
We say sleep like a baby, but we should say sleep like a husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did you find, go back a little bit, but how did you find being in a hospital as a parent, but also like as a nurse parent? Like, you know, did that have any impact on you, do you think? Did you like, I didn't mind being in hospital with Amelia when she was baby because it felt normal to me to be in a hospital, you know. I felt comfortable. I trusted the medical profession, but I guess if you've got things that you're not sure of and you're having constant readmissions, you know, it must be frustrating.
Yeah, it is. I always, you know, I could trust the consultants, and I knew kind of in like up at Joondalup, I knew who the consultants were. It was people who had looked after him before or looked after Ryan, and I kind of had faith in that part of things. The nursing staff in some instances were a bit tricky. Some places, everything was, really supportive, followed your concerns. Some people had obviously figured out I was a nurse from when they ask you what happens and, give them like a full isobar about everything that happened. But, I don't know that. Like, oh, my bad. It's just happened. And then once they, get that kind of rapport with you, it's like talking in the staff room kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they help you and you kind of bounce off each other about things you should do. And it was really good. But then other instances, I'd been dismissed as well. I remember he had been in hospital for saturations monitoring after the pediatrician had said he wasn't safe to be at home. And I rang the bell because I was watching the trace and I was like, his sats are 82. This is a perfect trace. Something is wrong. And I rang the bell and I got her to come and have a look. And she goes, oh, no, the sock's just not on his foot properly. It must not be a right trace. It doesn't fit or something. So she woke him up, changed it. And then, of course, it was fine because he'd woken up. And I was like, well, no, it does fit. It's not got any of the wriggly, squiggly bits. It is a near on perfect trace. And it's things like that where they just kind of go, oh, mum's just looking at the numbers. It's fine, which I get. Yeah. You get other parents that obviously don't know and will alarm and be upset about every single thing that comes up, which is fair. You don't know and it's scary and you have faith in people that they're looking after your kids. So it's kind of, you have faith in the system, but don't trust the system at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's like any, we tell patients, take a deep breath. And they're such 91. They're like, yeah, of course it's going to go up and they take a deep breath. Like, you've got to trust your numbers of your machine. You're using machine, you've got to trust it. Like, yeah. I don't say that anymore. I try not to say that. I'm like, I had someone say that to me once and I thought, she goes, what's taking a breath a difference of? If that's what
you're like, it's going to fix it and then I'm going to roll over and crumble it again.
Yeah, it looks nicer on the piece of paper.
Yeah. I don't want to have to call the doctor, so could you breathe harder?
So what sort of support do you think that you maybe didn't receive as a parent from either the healthcare system or from your family or friends, support networks? Was there things that you needed that didn't get?
It's hard. Most of our family doesn't actually live in close vicinity to us. They still obviously live in WA, but we live up north of the river and everyone lives south of the river, so it's a bit tricky for them to come up this way sometimes. But it's isolating, but it's not. People check in and they want to see and they ask if you're okay, but there's nothing people can really do when you have sick kids. It's shit and it sucks and you just kind of have to ride it out. But I remember saying to someone that I was feeling all these stresses and all these things kept going wrong, and I feel like I'm dramatizing, wanting someone to say, look, it's not that bad, suck it up, you'll be fine. And they just looked at me like, yeah, you feel that because it is shit. I'm like, that's not helpful.
Lie to me.
I don't want to be right. I want you to tell me I'm overreacting and it's all this drama and it's fine. Like, no, it really is shit. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
Have you gone back to work after having Owen yet? Are you trying to work as well as do all this?
Yes, I've been back, I think, for 4 weeks now, and I've probably taken 7 sick days so far. I now have no sick leave.
Yeah. That's the worst part, I guess. Like, because you want to go back to doing get back to doing what makes you happy alongside being a parent. But if you've got a sick kid, you've got a sick kid. Yeah. Like, your family has to come first.
Yeah, and then you get people who kind of, oh, you're never here, you're already sick. How are you sick again? I'm like, well, I can't keep them in a bubble. I can't bring them with me. Yeah.
And have you ever put a kid in daycare?
Yeah.
As soon as they go into daycare, it's like every germ just attaches to them and you spend more time at home than at work.
I know, it's ridiculous. But even now, like, I walk into the GP or the pharmacy and I don't even have to say who I am. It's like the pharmacist goes, what kid is it now? And the receptionist is like, you're all checked in. I'm like, I didn't even say hello.
besides all the daycare stuff, are the boys better? Like, are they doing well?
Ryan still forgets how to grow half the time. I think he's just going to be one midget of a kid, which
Little kid. Yeah.
makes sense knowing us. We're not the
I was
tallest.
going to say,
people.
Ian's not the tallest human in the world.
No, he's not. Well, when Owen came out and so tall, everyone was like, how do you guys have a tall kid? And I was like, I don't know.
I don't even know how you carried such a big baby, Emily. You're like tiny.
I was not tiny at the time. I grew a lot.
How tall are you, Emily?
I'm 165 centimeters.
Same height.
Little.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was 4.9 and 60 centimeters long.
60.
He would have been scrunched up in there.
Holy.
Well,
No wonder
I remember when
SBT.
I remember when his head came out and she's like, the head's out. And I was like, are you sure? Because I can still feel a foot in my rib. And she just looked at me and I was like, oh, this is not going to be good, is it?
Wow.
That's
a whole podcast on its own.
Yeah.
That birth is definitely a podcast on its own. That was a
Oh
shit
my
show
God.
from the beginning. Kelly, did you ever tell Jess how big his head was?
No, I didn't.
He had a 40 centimeter head.
Oh, you only dilate to 10 centimeters.
Yes.
How does
Look,
that?
I have not put that in perspective before. Why
Is
would
that
you
your
do
girl
that?
math?
My girl math is like, it's only this big. How does a 40 centimeter head? I mean, I know it's 40 centimeters. Yeah, I know it's not like 40 centimeters across, but I'm like, wow,
Wow, my girls were like 35 and that was
big.
enough.
I was looking at all the people's comments on the birth photos and everyone's like, oh, congratulations, congratulations. And Kelly's like, I'm sending ice packs for your vagina.
Alicia, I don't know if you like Alicia's birth story came out today. So it would have been last week for everyone listening to the podcast. But I literally said the same thing. I was like, how's your vagina? Yeah, because her baby was like, well, how big was Lachlan? 4.2. Yeah, like huge, like 4.7?
No.
4.4. 4.4, which is still big. But I was like RIP your vagina. Anyway, I wouldn't know. I just had a 1.3 kilo baby, so that's fine. I didn't even push it. Wow, do you have any advice for parents of babies that are unwell or sick? Like, is there anything that you, in hindsight, wish someone had told you while you were going through it?
Yes, it's always trust what you think is wrong and find a good GP. Because even if you are doubting it and you don't want to go straight to hospital, but you know, maybe I should have someone on standby that you can bounce it through. I've got friends that are the same. Something goes wrong, you call and be like, this is where I'm at, this, and this. I want to do this. What do you think?
Yeah.
And just having that extra person to kind of bounce things off and not spiral it on your own.
Yeah.
Not worry about being a burden, because I've said it to patients before, I'm sure you guys have as well, like, this is what we're here for. We would rather it be nothing than come in and everything be wrong, but you just always feel like a burden because everyone goes, oh, is this your first baby? Like expecting that you're just overreacting first time mum, and you're like, well, doesn't matter if it's my first, second, third. If I feel like something's wrong, something's probably wrong.
Yeah, that's right. That mum instinct's pretty powerful.
It is.
Nurse instinct, mum instinct. You got both. You go for it. Emily nursed my grandmother back in the day, and my grandmother had lovely things to say about Emily.
And your grandma is still one of my favorite patients. We still talk about her because she was awesome.
She was like, went in for a toe operation, and she was like, well, if I die, I've lived a good life. I'm like, you're literally having your toe operated on. She was like ready to sign an NFR. So funny. Thanks, Emily. I can't imagine what your fast five. Oh,
you to try that again?
Yeah. Can't imagine what the past 5 years have been like. That's intense. All those things. Anyway, your boys are gorgeous, and I know you guys are really good parents, and they're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for
Little
sharing with us.
monsters.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be parents out there who feel like they aren't alone when they hear this podcast, because they've got sick kids too.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than being up in the middle of the night, just pacing in the dark, thinking that you're the only one there.
You're the only one. Yeah.
We're all up pacing the halls together.
Yeah. You need a Facebook group.
Yeah.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
Mums who don't sleep. Imagine what the comments on that thing would be like, though.
I had a Facebook group when I had Willow.
Yeah.
And it was always lovely to be. There was always somebody up in the middle of the night that you could talk to, and I was up a lot.
Yeah, she never slept.
No, she didn't.
Then you have that little bit of bitterness to those people who never come on the middle of the night. Like, why are your kids sleeping?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
That was me. It always slept. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on the podcast platform that you're listening on, and you can leave a message for Emily on our Spotify page, because I'm going to put a Q&A box up there so you can leave her a little words of encouragement or ask her a question, and we'll forward it on.
A little love note.
Yeah, a little love note.
And love a love note.
Leave one for us.
Yeah,
too.
leave one for us.
Please leave us a review. God.
And while you're loving us, you can follow us on Instagram at 2humorousnesses podcast, or you can email us at hello@twohumorousnesses.com. That's humorous like the bone. HUMERUS. Bye.
Bye.